Hey, it's me here, so how are you guys? Today, I'm going to summarize a film titled Into the Night. Caution? Spoilers ahead. Be mindful. In the initial scene, a man named Terenzio rushes into an airport in Brussels, appearing frantic and hurried. While most would assume he's late for a flight, the reality is quite different. He requests assistance at the help desk for any ticket heading west, but learns that the soonest option is 2 hours away. Nevertheless, he purchases the ticket merely to move through the terminal. Meanwhile, at the same airport, a well-known influencer, Ines, is having a video call with a friend in New York when suddenly she starts to choke and loses consciousness. Ines feels anxious, especially since she can't offer any help. Outside, viewers watching TV notice that news reporters and live broadcasters have collapsed on screen. Furthermore, an entire street filled with people is lying unconscious on the ground. While the audience suspects it's some sort of prank, Terenzio understands the true situation. He declares it's time for action and hurries toward the terminal. When a security guard is momentarily distracted, Terenzio seizes his gun and demands that everyone clear his path. He charges onto a flight that is about to depart for Moscow, finding that only a few passengers have boarded. He enters and holds everyone at gunpoint, but the pilot is absent, and the co-pilot, Mathieu, refuses to assist the terrorist. During their struggle over the firearm, a bullet injures Mathieu's palm. Outside, passengers are in a state of panic, while flight attendant Gabrielle attempts to keep them composed. Terenzio emerges from the cockpit, asking if anyone on board can pilot the plane. A woman named Sylvie stands up, even though she is only a retired helicopter pilot. Under Terenzio's orders, she and Mathieu take off with the remaining passengers. The aircraft's avionics are damaged due to the bullet, making it impossible for those on the plane to communicate with anyone outside. Once airborne, Sylvie and Mathieu do their utmost to reason with Terenzio, but he remains resolute. He claims to be an officer assigned to NATO and insists that he has information they do not. When pressed, he discloses that the sun's rays have become lethal. Starting the following day, sunrise will be deadly to everyone, even those inside. This phenomenon has already begun in eastern countries like Japan and Korea, and the plane will be the next target if the sunrise reaches them. Mathieu and Sylvie, however, are skeptical and theorize that he may be mentally unstable. Terenzio admits that he may come off as foolish, but he insists he is not. Matthew's hand is bleeding heavily, which could create future complications. A passenger named Laura works as a home health nurse for an elderly man with dementia, making her the only medical expert on the flight. She decides to take charge and assist the pilot. Lacking a sewing kit to close the injury, they resort to a heated knife. Mathieu screams in agony, which causes the other passengers to become even more distressed. Aware that descent could jeopardize everyone's safety, he informs them they will be landing at a different site per Terenzio's request before proceeding to the intended destination. Mathieu remains hopeful that the fighter jets are en route to rescue them since they are under threat. Conversely, Sylvie has a gut feeling that they are on their own. A passenger named Ayaz has overheard their conversation about the sun and suspects that the pilot is deceiving them. Suddenly, an Arab passenger begins to cough and collapses. Ayaz feigns an attempt to assist him while stealthily grabbing Terenzio's gun. At Ayaz's command, Terenzio is confined in the restroom, and Mathieu is urged to speak the truth. The pilot reveals they are heading to Iceland because Terenzio wanted to go westward. There, the police will apprehend the terrorist, and the others will be released. He also mentions the sun and Terenzio's belief that it poses a deadly threat. This revelation sends the passengers into a state of panic. They begin to remember odd occurrences leading up to their flight and express concern for their families. Mathieu reassures everyone and takes on the duty of ensuring their safety as captain. Sometime later, he attempts to land at an airport in Iceland, but receives no communication from air traffic control. As they approach the ground, they notice multiple planes that have collided and people running in chaos. They finally realize that Terenzio was correct, but due to the obstructed runway, they are unable to land. With only enough fuel to fly briefly westward to Scotland, the captain opts for that course and hopes for a positive outcome. He releases Terenzio from the restroom so he can explain the situation to everyone. Terenzio shares that he learned about the sun by eavesdropping on a conversation among his superiors. He is uncertain about why this is happening or when it might stop. All he knows is that to survive, they must steer clear of the sunrise. Meanwhile, the previously unconscious Arab man struggles to breathe and is on the brink of cardiac arrest. In his final moments, he reveals that he ingested diamonds. Nurse Laura does her utmost to save him, but her efforts prove futile. As they initiate an emergency landing in Scotland, Matthew narrowly avoids crashing into a wall. Upon exiting the plane, their phones start buzzing with notifications from their families. The internet is saturated with reports about lethal sunlight. Half of humanity has perished, while the other half awaits their fate. The airport stands deserted, as everyone who had a chance to escape has fled, and the rest are hiding in dark places, hoping to shield themselves. Nevertheless, news indicates that people are dying even in safe havens like bunkers. Out of nowhere, 3 RAF servicemen approach them, seeking assistance. They have just 45 minutes before sunrise, so they opt to gather essential supplies and head west. Among the passengers is an aircraft engineer named Jakub, who wishes to return to his pregnant wife to save her, but for the safety of everyone on board, he is asked to step aside. After gathering supplies and filling the fuel tank, they take off once more. One of the servicemen, a pilot, recommends that they fly away from the equator to delay the sun catching up to them. Their next destination is Canada, where they plan to refuel the plane and repair the radio. After some time, the internet connection is restored, and their phones alert them with incoming messages from loved ones who have already succumbed in Brussels. At that point, a passenger discovers an article indicating that the disaster is caused by the sun's polarity. Another passenger, Horst, a climate expert, understands what the term sun's polarity implies. He explains that every 11 years, the sun's magnetic field shifts, but the reasons behind it remain a mystery. Historically, it hasn't had any significant impact on Earth, so limited research has been conducted on it. However, over the past few decades, the intensity of the magnetic reversal has been diminishing. Horst theorizes that the reversal has become much more potent in the opposite direction. If his explanation is accurate, Earth is being bombarded with gamma rays wherever sunlight penetrates, which is why people are dying instantaneously. They lack evidence to validate the theory, as the scientists who authored the article are likely also deceased. Just then, Ayaz discovers a news report stating that the RAF servicemen they picked up are actually terrorists from Afghanistan. They were apprehended and were en route back to their homeland when they arrived at the airport. Outside, one of the terrorists gets into an altercation and pushes an elderly man with dementia, leading to the old man's death and inciting disapproval from the other passengers. Sylvie informs Matthew about the report, and the duo decides to abandon the terrorists once they reach Canada. Shortly after, they land and have 2 hours before sunrise. Numerous casualties of the sunlight lie strewn across the city. The terrorists are instructed to search for radio repair parts at the nearest store. They agree but insist on bringing Gabrielle and Jakub along. The problem arises as Jakub is aware of the plan, whereas Gabrielle is not. Consequently, when they arrive at the store and Jakub attempts to confine the terrorists in a room, Gabrielle rejects his pleas to leave with him. Without wasting time trying to persuade her, he continues on. Ultimately, he reaches the airport while being pursued by the terrorists, but Gabrielle remains behind in the city. The airplane departs without her. The terrorists follow on foot and manage to shoot a window, causing a crack. Fortunately for the passengers, it only creates a fissure. So as long as they maintain a steady altitude, it should not shatter. A child named Dominic, who is terminally ill, is also aboard the flight. Ayaz attempts to engage him in conversation, but his overly protective mother, Zara, tells the man to leave them alone. Suddenly, they receive a radio communication from someone in Hawaii. The dialogue is abruptly interrupted, but they deduce that some survivors must be sheltered in an underwater bunker, explaining their survival. Matthew is eager to head to Hawaii as soon as possible, but Sylvie believes that pursuing a destination based on an ambiguous message is foolish. Meanwhile, Terenzio is enraged that the captain is the sole decision-maker. He raises objections, and everyone agrees that from then on, they should vote on decisions. Just as tensions begin to ease, multiple alarms sound, signifying a malfunction with the aircraft. After inspecting the issues, Matthew discovers that one of the terrorists who had been tailing the plane has attached himself to the landing gear. If he remains there, landing will be impossible. Therefore, Matthew resolves to ascend to a high altitude, believing the cold and lack of oxygen will incapacitate him. However, he neglects to account for the cracked window. Due to the pressure differential, it shatters, resulting in chaos within the cabin. Items are sent soaring as the passengers brace for the impending disaster. Quickly, Mathieu descends the plane to a lower altitude, while Jakub uses a wooden board to temporarily seal the window. Everyone regains their composure, but Dominic struggles to breathe after his respiratory tube is swept away. Ayaz devises a solution using the oxygen pipe to fashion a new respiratory device. Zara expresses gratitude and shame for her earlier behavior towards Ayaz. The captain informs everyone that reaching Hawaii is no longer a viable option since they cannot arrive on time at this altitude. The best course of action would be to land on Attu, an island in Alaska. Moreover, the turbulence was unable to dislodge the terrorist clinging on. Ayaz, Jakub, and Terenzio head to the undercarriage and create a hole in the plane's floor to get a glimpse of him. Terenzio aims his gun into the darkness, but the criminal seizes it and nearly kills him. Fortunately, Ayaz rushes to his aid and shoots the terrorist, becoming their hero for a brief moment, until the passengers learn he was responsible for the Arab passenger's demise. They bury his body back in Canada, where someone witnessed Ayaz cut him open. Ayaz admits he is a con artist who was smuggling diamonds from Brussels to Moscow. The diamonds were inside the Arab man's body with his consent, but the man died because he didn't follow the panicking instructions. After hearing this confession, some passengers argue that Ayaz should be left behind like the terrorists, but ultimately the vote favors Ayaz. Consequently, he is handcuffed in the avionics bay. In the next scene, they land in Alaska and refuel before takeoff. Once airborne again, the climatologist Horst notices something unusual. The fruits they collected in Canada lack flavor. He suspects this is due to intense gamma rays altering the atomic structure of the food. The most alarming aspect is that it reduces the nutritional value of the food. If this continues, they will face starvation within weeks. Matthew recognizes the risk, but asserts that their main priority should be escaping the sun. He has begun to lose control over his emotions in the last few hours. Sylvie urges him to take a break, but he snaps at her, which is not typical of his usual behavior. The other passengers decide to insist he rest and move him out of the cockpit. Although irritated, Matthew agrees to sleep for several hours. After some time, they pick up another signal on the radio and hear two people conversing. However, all they catch is the phrase, Stara 17. They quickly deduce that one of the speakers is a cosmonaut in space. Surprised that someone like that is still alive, they realize he must be in contact with the control room on Earth. With a renewed sense of hope for survival, they resolve to head to NATO headquarters in Brussels, where it all began. They estimate they will have 4 hours after landing in Brussels before the sun rises. Therefore, they may find valuable information about the secret bunker at the headquarters with Terenzio's assistance. Outside, Laura discovers Mathieu unconscious in the restroom. It turns out that the injury on his hand has become infected and led to blood poisoning. His earlier behavior can be attributed to this. To remedy the situation, they need to amputate the infected tissue. Laura indicates she can perform the procedure in Brussels if they reach a hospital. However, without Mathieu, Sylvie is unable to land the plane alone. The passengers plead with her since she is the closest thing to a pilot they have. But she understands her skills are limited to landing a helicopter. Horst helps her realize that if she doesn't take charge, everyone may die. Consequently, Sylvie is instructed to view several videos on how to land a plane. However, when it comes time to actually do the task, she panics. A sudden violent turbulence hits, and everyone braces for the worst. Ultimately, they experience a rough landing, but both the plane and the passengers are unharmed. Everyone applauds Sylvie and relishes the moment of success amid the crisis. Without wasting time, they split into 3 groups to tackle different responsibilities. 2 men remain at the airport to refuel the plane. Zara, Laura, and her group transport Matthew to the nearest hospital, while Terenzio, Ayaz, and a man called Rick head to NATO headquarters. At the hospital, they encounter numerous corpses obstructing the hallways. It appears that people were warned about the deaths before sunrise and were trying to escape. Laura instructs everyone to overlook the turmoil and concentrate on rescuing Matthew. Concurrently, Zara fills her bags with medication for her son and the others. Meanwhile, at NATO headquarters, Terenzio guides them to the conference room where he first learned about the catastrophe. They cannot sift through all the documents due to time constraints, so Rick opts to check if the surveillance footage holds any relevant information. When he steps away, Terenzio mocks Ayaz for his Turkish heritage, leading to an altercation. In the process, he accidentally strikes Ayaz, causing him to lose consciousness and bleed profusely. Elsewhere, Rick discovers a recording of officials discussing a bunker beneath a dam in Bulgaria. The location is referred to as Stara 17, matching the term they heard on the radio a few hours earlier. Before returning to his companions, Terenzio approaches him to inform him that Ayaz has already departed. Rick sees Ayaz's lifeless body sprawled in a pool of blood on the monitor, but is too frightened to say anything. 30 minutes prior to dawn, everyone boards the aircraft. Though Matthew is not feeling his best, he feels improved after the surgery. Terenzio informs everyone that Ayaz left before them, but they can't wait any longer for him to come back. With heavy hearts, they initiate the engines when unexpectedly, a car halts in front of the plane and Ayaz emerges. In the next scene, Terenzio finds himself handcuffed in the avionics bay. Sylvie tells everyone that if their plan for Bulgaria fails, they will lack the fuel and time to reach another location. Upon landing, everyone must be prepared as they will have just 20 minutes to drive to the bunker's location. Ayaz is using the restroom when he experiences a seizure. It only lasts a few seconds, and he assumes it's due to his significant blood loss. However, he chooses not to reveal this to the others. After exiting, he is asked what he wants to do with Terenzio. Not wanting to condemn him to death, he permits him to accompany them to the bunker. Later, they arrive at a Bulgarian airport and split into 2 groups, traveling in separate vehicles. Sylvie operates the first car and leads, while Ayaz drives the second. During the journey, he has another seizure, leading to a crash. The first vehicle has already sped away, leaving the group unable to catch up in the limited time. At a junction, Sylvie turns right and arrives at a partially opened gate. A passenger attempts to touch it and is thrown back by the electric shock. Additionally, they learn they must keep pressing a button for the gate to remain open. To make up for his actions, Terenzio volunteers to wait for the others while Sylvie and her group go ahead. Before departing, Sylvie handcuffs him to a stand to prevent him from betraying them. This also ensures that he will only be free when the other team arrives. On the other hand, Ayaz and his group turn left at the intersection and find another similar gate on the opposite side of the dam. They use their clothing to scale the entrance and, in the end, they all reach the bunker entrance, despite having taken different exits. The military personnel finally greet the passengers and assure them they are safe here. Terenzio is left alone outside, seeking divine forgiveness. As dawn breaks, he stands facing the sun, urging it to give its best. In the end, he is also killed. Thank you for watching.